Okay, I'm recording. Out of the Blue, an overview of blue color from 1500s to present. What could be more breathtaking than a big blue sky? The color blue has inspired and driven technical innovation throughout Western art history. We should begin with a brief note about how paint is made. In Victoria Finlay's work on the natural history of the palette, she notes from a translation of Cennino Cennini's Handbook of Techniques that pigment is a dry, mineral-based, animal-based, or vegetable-based material that is mixed with a liquid material to create paint. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, a colored substance, usually artificially prepared from mineral or organic substance, used for coloring or painting. A paint, dye, color, especially a dry substance used in the form of powder, which when mixed with oil, water, or other liquid medium constitutes a paint. One of the most prized throughout the ages was the deep blue shade of ultramarine. Ultramarine was unrivaled in rarity and complexity. It was pure, mixable, and permanent. At one point, the paint was more valuable by weight than gold. Ultramarine pigment is derived from lapis lazuli. The best and only source of lapis lazuli to medieval painters was a province of what is now modern Afghanistan in the northeast corner of the map here. The raw lapis was pounded into a powder with a mortar and pestle, removing the constituent minerals, which you can see here in the striations of gold and white. Usually these are pyrite or sodalite. Then a combination of oils, waxes, and resins, such as gum mastic or linseed oil, were added. Then over the next 3 days, the resultant paste was kneaded and massaged as a dough ball. Finally, the paste was pressed and reused, and then the paint was sealed in pig bladders. Initial or virgin pressings of the paint yielded the highest quality blue color. On the left, you see the Wilton diptych panel, and on the right, Titian's Bacchus and Ariadne. These are earlier and later examples of natural ultramarine pigment in painting. Titian and Vermeer in particular were renowned for their lavish use of the paint, as they were self-financing and able to purchase their own. Due to the rarity of the pigment, other painters were not so fortunate and required their patrons to bring the paint to them directly. This is an unfortunately forever unfinished canvas from Michelangelo entitled The Entombment. We can see where the artist used the coloration azurite that was initially a moderate blue-green color on Mary Magdalene's gown, and in the lower right-hand corner of the painting there's space left blank for a kneeling Mary. We believe that the painter was unable to complete the canvas because his patron never brought him the ultramarine needed. Now, according to Finlay, the cheaper blue that was frequently used was called azurite. Azurite is a constituent mineral found when copper mining. It's frequently found closer to European settlements in France and Germany. Unfortunately, it tends to be more green than blue and less permanent. Frequently, it fades to an unattractive olive drab color when exposed to UV light or some chemicals. Prussian blue. In his 2000 Montreal Gazette article, Joe Schwartz shares the introduction story of Prussian blue. In 1704, while endeavoring to make red paint, German chemists Herr Dierbach and Johann Dippel mixed potash and vitriol to produce Prussian blue. Vitriol, by the way, was commonly used as a green dye and pigment, and we widely know it now by the term iron sulfate. While the new Prussian blue may have lacked the purity and mystique of ultramarine, it did have the attractive feature of being less than a tenth as costly. There was also some concern that production of Prussian blue involved workers being exposed to cyanide, although the cyanide was rendered neutral via binding when it was in liquid paint form. Handling the raw materials could be deadly for workers. In an article in the Times of London by Philip Ball, he shares the introduction of the cobalt pigment. Cobalt has been used as a source of blue since antiquity, particularly in stained glass. In 1802, however, French chemist Louis Thénard used it as a pigment for paint, and it was widely adopted commercially thereafter. While cobalt had stability and permanence, it was also dangerous to produce and manufacture, since wherever cobalt is found, it's common to find arsenic. This, regrettably, was not always a paramount concern to artists, but cobalt had a tendency to also be more grayish blue when the paint dried. Artists were still not satisfied. Then, according to Philip Ball, the French Society for the Encouragement of National Industry offered a prize of 6,000 francs in 1824 to anyone who could make artificial ultramarine at an affordable price. Ultimately, a Frenchman from Toulouse named Jean-Baptiste Guimier won the prize by mixing china clay, charcoal, sulfur, and sand in a furnace, resulting in a pure rich ultramarine, also known as French ultramarine. There was some resistance to the new synthetic paints. They did have detractors, particularly among the art community, notably Vincent van Gogh and Claude Monet. The lab-created blue colors had evenly sized pigment particles and uniform distribution of pigment particles throughout the media. Critics of the colors say this homogenization robbed them of their individual character. Eventually, however, the ease and economy of the synthetic colors won over the majority of the artistic community, although to this day some niche artists do recognize the place of the historical techniques. Familiarity with the materials and processes are particularly valuable to restorers, appraisers, and art historians. The story of blue does not necessarily stop with the Industrial Revolution. In a 2010 article in the Washington Post, Blake Gopnik recounts a brief history of the artist Yves Klein. Klein was troubled over the transition from the silky blue pigment to a more chalky paint, and used a mix of synthetic pigment and natural media to create a new color he patented and called International Klein Blue. Klein used his new blue in fields of pure color and abstract nudes he created by having actual nude models make impressions of themselves upon his oversized canvases. In conclusion, the pursuit of a permanent, stable, mixable, and affordable blue has been an obsession for many centuries. This quest has cost lives and caused fortunes to change hands. It has also been a source of artistic inspiration, commerce, and scientific innovation.